Kaden Coleman ran Scout Mountain Ultra last week. He ran the 100-miler, and I thought it'd be fun to hear about Scout Mountain in general. I've heard great things about the Nelsons who are in charge of that race, who started that race. They're well loved in the community. You'll hear Kaden talk about that. So that'd be fun to hear it through the eyes of someone who just ran it last weekend. So today's feature is all about Scout Mountain. You'll hear, my superpower is I'm willing to be embarrassed and look stupid. I look pretty dumb in this episode when I get some elevation gain wrong. I get geography wrong as usual, but that's the purpose of this. I'm trying to learn about it, and you can learn about it with me through my eyes. I'll ask the dumb questions for you. How about that? Kaden also says probably my all-time favorite, most insightful thing I've ever heard to characterize American trail running. And I know that's a lot of hype, but you'll hear it here, and then you will hear me say this statement that Kaden said for the rest of my life, because I think it's such an accurate descriptor of American trail running, and I'm pretty stoked on that. Before we get there, I just released a documentary through Borderlands about my attempt to design 100-miler. It's called Trail Grit. It's episode 4. There are actually 3 episodes before it. But episode 4 is my return to the 100-miler after 8 DNFs and 1 finish. This was me trying to unlock another finish. And my dude Ben at Honey Videography just put out a phenomenal documentary there. Also, if you're enjoying the content, really helps if you follow. Don't do it as a favor, because it's really only helpful if you follow and then continue to engage with the content. So if you're enjoying it, if you'd leave a review, follow the content, I'd be super grateful. But regardless, enjoy this conversation with Kaden. I really like him. So my pursuit continues of talking about ultras, and I think I've done a decent job of getting out of the West, by and large. The Western United States bias toward ultra trail running is strong with me, simply because I live in Salt Lake. I mean, not simply because I live in Salt Lake, but there's some amazing ultras out here in the West, and but I get it. Those get a disproportionate amount of coverage. So I've been getting out of the West. I was in Salzburg last week, been in, I would say, the Southwest, so that counts, in Paladero Canyon in West Texas. But today we're back in the West, which just is what it is. There's a really cool small race called Scout Mountain, put on by the Nelsons, up in Pocatello, Idaho, of all places. And I say of all places because if you live in Salt Lake, you don't necessarily think of Pocatello as like an ultra running destination. No. But if you're in the East, you might think, well, you see the elevation gain potential, and it's like, or even the South, like, oh man, that's still a hardy ultra. So my friend Kaden's joining me today. He's been on the podcast before because he's in the middle of a Grand Slam, and I think he just did his first one at Scout Mountain. He's on his way to Ouray. He's going to end up at the Bear in the end. And what's number 3 going to be, Kaden? It's
Wyoming Range.
Wyoming? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you just knocked out number 1 there at Scout Mountain. So today I just want to talk about Scout. So it'd be cool to have the race be the hero, but since you just ran it a few days ago, it's fresh on your mind. I want to hear about what was unique about 2024, but just the course in general. So before we get too far, my first responder of a friend, Kaden, he's the best first responding ultra runner in the country. And yes, I'm aware that Andy Glaze is also a first responding ultra runner. I'm just kidding. He's the only one I know. That's my fault. Welcome, Kaden.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. Hey, before we just jump right into Scout, talk about your first responder status. You recently got some sort of diploma. You look like you were wearing like some graduate clothing of some kind. What's life like for you right now?
Yeah, so I finally finished paramedic school, and that's been awesome just because I finally have time on my hands again. So I'm still a firefighter and everything. That just kind of takes it up to the next level, instead of sitting around on the medical calls. Now I'm kind of the guy calling the shots. So more stress, but I'm done with the school part at least. So that's nice to
that's great.
Be back to my schedule.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I want to be running an ultra next to you, because of the poor decisions I tend to make in ultras. So if I collapse, it's with you. All right, let's jump into Scout. You're doing let's put it in the context of the Grand Slam, because it was the first of your Grand Slam, and so talk about it as a position, as a first in the Grand Slam. How are you feeling right after it? Give me some of the high levels of what made the race hard. Just kind of just chat about it for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, dude, the race was awesome. Like, just like you said in your intro, nobody really thinks out here about Pocatello, Idaho more than it's a funny name, But
Right.
dude, the second we drove in with all of like the spring colors and the green, I was like, oh man, like
Oh,
this is
nice.
gonna be awesome. Yeah, like
Yeah.
dude, driving around because you kind of are driving north the whole time, right, from Salt Lake, and it's just desert and desert mountains, everything that we
Yeah.
all know. And then yeah, you make
Uh-huh.
that turn west into the city, and man, it was crazy. It blew my mind a little bit. And I've driven that road before. I don't know why I've never noticed it, but
Huh.
dude, yeah, it was awesome.
What was the weather like?
It was hot. It was super hot. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a lot hotter than I think anybody expected. But yeah, the mountains themselves were phenomenal. Somebody asked me how I thought the course was, and
Uh-huh.
I would compare it to like a lower elevation crazy mountain. Like the trails were just as technical, like the sights were just as
Interesting.
beautiful. Yeah, it was awesome, and it was super super difficult in a way that I wasn't anticipating. But like the beauty and
Yeah.
everything just blew me away. Like straight from the start, all the wildflowers and the views and
Yeah.
just getting lost in the mountains out there was pretty insane. But
Yeah.
yeah, weather-wise,
Yeah.
definitely
Quick
definitely hot and brutal.
hot. Quick shout out then to Crazy Mountain because they are in the Rocky Mountain Slam if I understand correctly, but you only need to get they give you 6 to choose from because that's which is really smart because you can in case one sells out or whatever, you just have other options. The only mission critical is that you have to end at the Bear because it's the final in the award
Mm.
ceremony. So you did Crazy Mountain last year, uh, and you're saying that Scout reminds you of Crazy Mountain in terms of terrain, route, elevation gain, everything, like the whole scope.
I, yeah, shockingly, like 100%. 100%.
Huh.
The only difference is like the max elevation, I don't think we hit. We probably got close to 9,000 if I remember with Scout
Okay.
Mountain.
Yeah.
Whereas Crazy Mountain, you're getting up a little bit higher and spending more time like in those mountain
Right.
passes and everything. But yeah, in terms of like technicality and just views and everything, like I'd say it beat me up just as much as Crazy did. It was way tougher than I thought it was going to be.
Huh.
For
Yeah,
sure.
that's cool. And so all of these in the Rocky Mountain Slam are pretty alpine. Like, so when I think of Crazy Mountain or Ouray, like you're in the trees, and maybe Ouray, you're probably above the tree line most of the time, I guess, or some of the time you're all over the place there. What is this? Is this a pretty exposed course, or is you got some shade along the way? What's it like?
Yeah, I mean, like I expected with the Rocky Mountain Slam for a lot of the races to be similar to the Crazies, and that's kind of why
Yeah,
I'm pursuing it because those are the races
yeah,
I enjoy. Like I enjoy the adventure of everything, and I think I definitely underestimated Pocatello, and like I told Luke that like I 100% underestimated it, but it was super exposed. I would say I don't know. I mean, most of the course was exposed. Like you don't have any heavy timber that you see up in like more northern Idaho or anything like that. But
yeah.
like we got good ridge lines. Like this is the first race where I've glissaded like 1,000 feet. You know, middle of the race, or I guess it's more towards
What
the
is that
end.
word
But
you just used? Glissaded.
glissade, yeah,
That's
yeah.
brand
Have
new.
you ever heard of
That's new to me.
glissade?
I don't claim to be smart, but no, that's new to me. What? Tell me about that.
No, yeah. So anytime you have snow, right? Like obviously you think of like skiing, everything like that. A lot of people
Um.
don't realize, yeah, there's a whole nother way to like descend snow, right? And that's glissading. So typically, if it's more complicated, more severe, you're going to be using an ice axe and stuff. And that's what you see me
Sure.
doing a lot of my training, just because those are the adventures that I enjoy. But Scout was awesome,
Yeah.
man. Mile 90, we summit Scout, Scout Mountain itself, and you're 90
Uh huh.
miles deep into this ultra marathon. You have this like perfect, like I'm willing to bet it's close to 1,000 feet of snow in a couple different sections where you just sit on your butt and slide. It was awesome.
Oh, okay. 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 I've done that when you do speed goat. There's a section of speed goat that you're always glissading, and now I know what to
Yeah.
call it. I thought it was like kind of like falling gracefully or something like that, but I guess it
Yeah.
I guess it has a
No,
name.
there's an actual term,
Um,
glissading. Yep.
how did that feel at mile 90? Like your body's pretty like tight at that point. You know, there's all sorts of pain. Was that enjoyable in the moment, or is it only enjoyable to look back on?
I think it was enjoyable in the moment and to look back
Yeah,
on, just because
nice.
it was, yeah, it was cool because like as I was running up, like I ran because you start to run into people from the other distances, and it's kind of a unique
Uh huh.
clash because you have like the 100 milers
Mm,
who are a shorter, smaller group that have been out there,
yeah.
suffering in the 90-degree heat for 2 days and everything. Then you start running in with people who are doing, 21 miles, 50K, 50 mile. And a lot of
Yeah.
the people that I was running into had ran the course previously. And everybody's talking about like this big glissade, like, oh, you're going to do the glissade? Are you going to do the glissade? I was like, of course I'm going to do the glissade. Like, are you kidding me? Like, why
Of
wouldn't I do the
course.
glissade,
Yeah.
And it was cool. We got up to the top, and like it was like it almost brought like a whole new energy just having that different switch of adventure. And maybe that's just me, man.
That's
Like
cool.
maybe I'm not your most like stereotypical runner or whatever, but like just to add that like
Yeah.
aspect of adventure into the race is so fun.
Yeah, that was the word I was going to use for you. Is that you've got an element of adventurer in you. That's, I mean, and we all do as ultra runners, but you kind of, I guess what I mean by that is the stuff I see you out doing is more than just running. You're probably the type that would enjoy like the whirl or one of Jared Campbell's ridiculous
Oh yeah,
routes through the Wasatch, where you're where you're I don't know, using your hands more, just at times is just as much as your feet and stuff. So, you think that's an
yeah.
accurate description of you?
Oh no, totally. I mean, that's how I train. Like all of those, Wasatch like scramble routes that you see, like that. Even just the past
Yeah.
2 weeks, I've probably been up the west slabs of Olympus like 6 times. It's too much fun to not do it when
Nice.
it's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Are the snakes out? Are you seeing any rattlesnakes going up Olympus?
Yeah, I've been running into them too much lately,
I
unfortunately.
know. I know. I haven't had time to get onto trails, but I've seen tons of photos, and I mean, there's some like big ones, like real big ones this year
Yeah,
from photos I've
it's
seen.
kind of that weird in between season where it's like like the foothills and the lower elevation stuff is still
Yes.
kind of like the go-to. Like you can't run up high quite yet, but it's getting too hot where the
Yeah.
snakes are coming out and everything. So usually when you start seeing the snakes, I feel like that's when it's time to start driving up the canyon a little bit more and testing out all the
Yeah.
spots.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. So maybe you are more uniquely suited for Ure than other. What do you think about that statement? If you're like this adventurer, loves to climb, you're doing these crazier things. Maybe your quads are in better shape than the average. How are you feeling about Ure?
It's interesting because I had different fluctuations throughout Scout of
Uh
like
huh.
this is a crazy ass idea, like it's stupid, like
Yes.
you know
Yeah.
but like no matter what, if I was like okay with the Rocky Slam or like not okay, like okay, I don't even really care about this
Yeah.
anymore, like no matter what I was feeling in the
Mm-hmm.
moment, like I 100% I'm going to do Ure. Like Ure, out of all of the races in the
Love that.
slam that I chose, it seems the most adventurous. And if I get through that one and
Yeah.
decide like the rest is stupid and whatever, that's just how it is. But
Yeah.
and not to discredit the other races, I think the other races are awesome, but
Totally.
there's definitely a
Yeah.
lot of wear and tear that comes from doing these races.
Yeah. Yeah. How old are you?
25. That's the other thing too.
25. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got I
And I
got
mean,
plenty
what's
of
nice,
time to beat up my body.
that's what I was going to say. I mean, like you've got 15 years until you're at your pinnacle. That's what I love about this sport. Like, man, you've got time, but also while you're young to throw in these slams. But at the same time, Josh Landvatter, who's my age, going for his traditional Grand Slam.
Hmm.
Yeah, you just got that's. I love the sport. You've got forever, but I hope you get. I
Yeah.
hope you get all of them this year. So anyway, back to Scout Mountain. So you get
Yeah.
there, you take off running. There's all the other different distances. I think they've got if I memory serves, 50 miler, 50K, and then there's something shorter, I believe. I don't remember off the top of my head,
21,
but
I think, is
it's
the
got a lot of
shortest.
distance. That yes, that's right. But so you take off, and like how is the total elevation gain between 6,000 and 7,000 feet? Did I read that correctly,
For
or
the
is it
whole
more?
entire race?
Yeah, or maybe I saw that at a different distance. What is it for the 100 miler?
For the 100 mile, it was 22,000, so a little more than
Oh dear
7,000.
lord, I was way off.
Yeah,
Maybe I was looking at like the 5K. um,
yeah,
okay, so man, that's you're up in Wasatch territory with that amount of gain. Um,
yeah.
what's it like? What are there stretches, long stretches of runnable? Are the downhills runnable? Is there any point where you're just like hitting like cruise control and just finding a rhythm, or is it always up and down, up and down?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's a lot of course at Scout Mountain that's runnable, you know?
Yeah.
um, like, I think most years to win, like, people are going like 20 hours, 21 hours as like a
Uh,
slow, a slow winning time.
okay.
Yeah, so there's definitely runnable parts. Like the first part of the course, I think I spent a decent amount of time running. You kind of go like 15 miles without there's aid stations and there's creeks and stuff like that, but like the first 15-mile stretch is a little bit like more on the exposed side, like with the
Yeah.
exceptions of like certain miles where you're kind of looping into the mountains and everything.
Uh-huh.
But a lot of it seemed pretty runnable. The crazy part for me, and I feel like a lot of people shared this with me, was the nighttime. The heat didn't
Mm-hmm.
let up, and so it's
Oh,
kind of
really?
like, oh, really? Yeah, like a lot of people ran awesome races, like up to 50 miles. Like I felt like I ran a super solid race. Like I ran like
Hmm.
11:30 or something like that in my first 50,
Nice.
and everything felt good, especially considering the heat. Like the heat, it was the hottest day on Idaho record up to the point in that year, or this
Oh,
year, I
dang.
guess.
Gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, and everything was going smooth. Like heat was managed. Like I had lows, but we kind of came out of everything. But I think like all of the
Mm-hmm.
like heat exhaustion, everything building into the night, and then to have it not
Yeah.
cool down at all, like it
Yeah.
just it was
That's a little
brutal.
defeating. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the
I
crazy
wonder
part
why
because
that
I think
is.
the night, yeah, I don't know. I mean, and like I said, I just finished paramedic school. Like I should understand my body a little bit more, I guess. But it was weird, man. Like the flats at night, like I couldn't run because I was so nauseous. And a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
struggle with nausea. Like I know that's not an uncommon thing in ultras, but like it was something that was completely new for me. Like I've never like felt that way before, and so that was where it got tough. And it was just kind of like, you know, tuck your head down and keep grinding it out,
Yeah.
because everything will pass eventually. But
Yeah.
it's sometimes kind of difficult to
Yeah.
remind yourself that.
So that 11, you said 11 and a half for the first 50. How was your second 50? What was your time on that?
I mean, my total time was like 28 hours, so it probably adds up
Okay.
to like a 16 something
Yeah.
on the back half.
And you think you would attribute that to the unexpected warm night? I mean, in general, I don't know. I'd love to actually know these statistics, like what the average runner runs their second 50 in compared to their first 50. I know that there are such things as negative splits out there, but not in my realm. Yeah. So then ultimately the question is what do you think? Was there anything specific to the course itself that led to a 16-hour or so second 50? Is there more gain on the back half? Is that Scout Mountain, with it being called Scout Mountain, is the climb up Scout Mountain a significantly harder moment in the course than the other climbs throughout the course?
Yeah, I would say so. There's kind of like two like big climbs in my opinion after running it. The first one, because you
Uh-huh.
summit two mountains that are pretty much like equivalent in elevation. So the first one is Old Tom, which you summit at around like mile
Oh,
20,
nice.
And yeah, that was when I first like was like, whoa, like this place is legit. Like I'm looking at like snowy ridge lines and
Yeah.
everything up high, like
Oh
thunderstorms
dang.
rolling in all around
Yeah.
us. And but yeah, I
Yeah.
think that total climb was like 3,000 to 4,000 feet. But then yeah, that climb up Scout Mountain, which came at like mile 80, like that's like it's a 5,000 foot climb after running 80 miles in 90-degree weather. You know,
Yeah. Yeah,
it's funny
that's
because
slow
like
moving.
everyone, it seemed like everyone in my circle around me was from like somewhere around here in the Wasatch. And I remember leaving the aid station.
Okay.
I told my buddy Ethan that was with me, I was like, hey man, I was like, all we gotta do is go
Hmm.
climb Lone Peak, you know, like that's it. And then it's just a cruise down. And
Oh
it's
man.
kind of funny when you
For
start
those
relating
who
it to
aren't in
everything
Salt
that's
Lake,
going on here.
yeah. For those not in Salt Lake, Lone Peak is like one of the beasts of the Wasatch Front. I mean, that's like when you put it in that perspective, that's quite demoralizing. Unless unless it's motivating to you. But man, 5,000 feet. That's a pretty insane climb that late
Yeah.
in the race. But I guess Ouray is going to be that on steroids.
Yeah, Ure. I'm trying to give myself at least 24 more hours before I start to process that one more.
Wrap your mind around that. Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's weird. I'm
So
nervous, but I'm excited.
yeah, how's your body? Let's see. What are we at here? We're like 3 days, 4 days out, 2 days out. Let's see. It's Tuesday. Yeah, like 3 days out. How's your body recovering?
Pretty good. I'm happy with it. I think the night that I came back, like I was feeling pretty tight and everything. I was on schedule to work the next day, start like a 48-hour shift,
Oh man.
and I fully intended on going.
Yeah.
I ended up calling out
And
sick,
then
and if
okay.
any of my guys are listening to this, like they know that I called out sick, and I felt pretty bad, but I ended up going back in for the second day. So I worked all day yesterday and got off this
Nice.
morning at 7 a.m. So all of that considered, like the
Did
rest
you
that I
have
was able to
any? I
get
don't know.
that
I don't even
first
know how
day.
you worded. Did you have emergencies that you had to go after?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, and they decided to do high rise training all day. So, we were messing around in a 9-story building going up and down the stairs, and I'm just like pulling on the rails, and everyone's like, "Hey,
No
usually you're good. Like what's
way.
going on here?" Yeah, it was brutal.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, that all
Well,
being said, like I
go ahead.
feel pretty good. I think a little bit of time to,
Great.
you know, rest the legs a little bit more and then start to get up as high as I can, get used to the elevation again.
Yeah. If you were to let's imagine what that the 2025 Scout Mountain Ultra was opening for registration. You're chatting with someone who's trying to pick one 100 miler for 2025. They're in the Mountain West region. What would be your sell to them? What would be your pitch to them to try and sell them for Scout Mountain to be their only 100 miler that they run? Like what did you love about it? What is the value to you in that one? I like that there's not a lot of runners. Like it seemed like it deserves to have more, but I think there were like 28 finishers, so it's familial in a sense. It's smaller, but what is it to you that would make you try? Like, what would be the selling point for you?
Man, I'm so glad you asked that question. Like, if you cut out the whole rest of the interview and just play this, like, if if
Yeah.
you if you want to run a race where you get like insane mountain terrain, maybe lower elevation than other
Mm-hmm.
Rocky Mountain races, but honestly not by much. If you want to run a race
Yeah.
where you're going to be surrounded by people that don't know you but love you, then I think this is the race for you. And if
Mm.
that can sum it all up,
Wow.
that's probably the best way that I can say it, man. Like Luke Nelson, uh,
Yeah.
it like makes me get like goosebumps and emotional, man. Like every time I saw that guy out on
Yeah.
the course, I saw him probably at 4 different aid stations. It was teary eyes and smiles and hugs. And to be
Hmm.
able to finish that
Wow.
race and he stood there at the finish line, man, and hugged every single person that finished. like with big
Oh,
wide open arms,
wow.
teary eyes. Yeah, it was a very personal, emotional thing, and it extends beyond him. He's created a community where everybody there was that way.
Hmm.
Everybody there was supporting one another,
Wow.
and yeah, take aside the heat and the difficulties and whatever, all that, like none of that mattered in comparison to
Yeah.
just like the support that everybody filled you with. I couldn't have done it without everybody that was there. So
Man,
if that
that's a
sounds like
great
that's something that
that's a
interests you,
great
yeah, Scout Mountain's your
headline.
race.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get the appeal of I just love the sport. I get the appeal of UTMB and running with 10,000 runners through the course of the week. I love that. There's a
Mm.
absolute place for that. The way that you just worded the small American ultra running thing, people that don't know you but
Oh,
love you,
100%.
man, I feel like that is like the explanation. I will say that for years to come, because I think about every race out there, like you did last year, saddles, like smaller
Mm.
race, probably going to grow over time. Michael Versteeg,
Same.
he's got the public persona that's a little bit rough and tumble, but he's a kind guy who doesn't know you but loves you. Like, I just feel like all of these American ultras are summed up in that statement. And then it sounds like, from your perspective, that Scout really personifies it even above and beyond. And I've heard the same thing. I've never met Luke or his wife, but I've just heard that Luke is just a gem of the community. So that's cool to hear you say that. Do you have any final thoughts on Scout? Any other things? Anything about the Rocky Mountain Ultra in general? Like, we know that you're pausing to think about Ouray. Anything on the Bear, or remind me of your third one again? I don't know why I keep forgetting that.
Wyoming Range.
Yeah, Wyoming. Tell me
Yeah.
about Wyoming Range. That, because obviously I keep forgetting. Give me some details on that one.
I mean, it's the same thing as all of these ones. Big, heavy mountain race, super technical from what it sounds like. Amazing race director, very like similar American ultra running vibes, where it's not about all of like the glam and the glory of 10,000 people. It's intimate,
Yeah,
and it's an adventure that's shared, with the people that are around you.
yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
awesome.
just ran
Where
ran
at in
in
Wyoming?
Wyoming. It's like south of, and I still have yet. I'm trying to compartmentalize everything,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
That's fair.
I know
That's
it's
smart.
like it's the mountain range south of the Tetons. I think it's just the Wyoming Range is what
Oh,
it's
okay,
called.
I'm gonna
So
look it up. There's no shame.
no, go
It
for it.
is Hoback, Wyoming,
Yeah,
and that is a place that I've never heard of. So
yeah.
that's lovely.
It's another one of those ones where it's like you wouldn't expect, but I think you traverse
Mm-hmm.
south to north through the mountain range and spend most
Yeah,
of your time like up high, like above 9,000 feet. So
I see. I see. Yep. Okay.
Jared Campbell told me at Rufa this year. I was kind of telling him some of my plans. He told me that that's one of his favorite races in all of the
Oh, really?
West. He says that they
Oh,
do,
really?
yeah, a phenomenal job. And
Hmm.
if Jared Campbell's recommending it, it's probably a little bit
Yeah.
more on the adventurous side than like a
It's
traditional
gonna
Western
suck,
race
actually.
kind of. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
uh, so hearing about Wyoming Range, uh, knowing what I know about Ouray and Scout Mountain, if nothing else, I don't know. Is Wyoming Range a pretty young race?
Yeah, I think
Looks
this
like,
is
yeah.
like its third year.
So the Bear is the outlier here, because the Bear is like icon of races,
Yeah.
and it's where the Grand Slam ends. So that's now it makes sense to me why, possibly, if I think about Crazy. What's the other one that someone could potentially choose from? Do you know off the top of your head?
So Crazy's not actually in it. You've got
Oh, it's
uh,
not. Okay.
no. I think they're talking about maybe adding it in the future,
Okay,
but
that's
as
maybe
of
that's
right
what I'd
now,
heard.
it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, but right now you've got Bighorn and Scout.
Yeah.
Then you've got uh, Hard Rock, Ouray, Leadville, Wasatch, the Bear, and Wyoming Range.
Oh, okay. There's a lot there. So what you have on your
Yeah.
calendar is you've got these. Caden, there's like a brand. There's a brand of Caden. It's that I'm seeing here, and that is these small races, smaller, and maybe more importantly, and not more importantly, but also newer. So you got these smaller, newer races, and then it ends at the icon that is the bear.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's you.
that's kind of the goal. And I mean, to sum it up, it's if you want to put a brand to me or whatever, I mean, most of
Yeah,
the time I'm just doing whatever I think is fun, right? But
yeah,
especially with ultra running, what I've kind of come to realize or find about myself is that like you're not running for bragging rights, you're not running to like most of us aren't going out to win races and make money, you know?
yeah.
And so we
Right.
do it for the experience, and experiences are better shared. They're better when they're hard, you know?
Yeah,
And that's,
yeah,
it's all about that
yeah,
like intimate, like hard experience to just get to, you know, live life a little bit deeper than the average person, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'll quote you for the rest of my life. I'll give you credit every time. Ultra running,
Oh,
the
thanks, man.
community is a community that doesn't know you but loves you. Caden, thanks for joining me talking about Scout. Pretty cool to hear about it. Hope to run it someday. If nothing else, go hang out at it. But I appreciate you telling a little bit about your experience today and for joining me.
Yeah, man. Thank you. All credits to Scout. That was an awesome race for sure.
Right on. Take care, man.
You too, man.